Sup y'all, Winnie here, and welcome back to the Warhammer 40K Wiki. I'm aiming to finally finish reading about the Blood Angels. I'm hoping it sticks to just being a three-part thing. It's been a while, but that's because I was working on some other stuff and everything else took a back seat, so sorry about that. So, recent history now. Wait. I was about to do the thing, but I'm not. Yeah, that's fine. I just gotta scroll up, or I gotta scroll down? I think I gotta scroll up. Or I could just... No. Recent history. There we go. I forgot that hitting F11 makes the page freak out. It is well known that the Sons of Sanguinius keep a firmly united council, convening on matters of grave import from time to time. In such conclaves, it is typical that all present defer to the chapter master of the Blood Angels. Although over the course of 10,000 standard years, there have been occasions when the voice of another is considered senior. And here's a picture of the Blood Angels marching to war. One such case was when the newly appointed Lord Commander Khalil succumbed to the Black Rage in the 35th millennium, and his brothers from the Angels Sanguine and Angels Vermilion jointly took up the mantle of seniority for a time, overseeing the reaction of the Sons of Sanguinius to Wog Vangrod, the Chaos Insurgent of Silas Gorhan, and the latter phase of the Nova Terra Interregnum? This spirit of cooperation has led the Sons of Sanguinius to stand together time and again, uniting in a common cause against terrible enemies. There's a Blood Angel Space Marine. A great example of this is the fighting on the Archaeotech world of Hell's Hollow in the 37th millennium, where the Angels and Carmine, Blood Drinkers, and Blood Angels joined forces to crush a vast Chaos cultist uprising and the subsequent demonic invasion. Likewise, in the 40th millennium, a Knights of Blood and Flesh Terror strike force routed a massive Eldari army from the maiden world of Kal Aoth? This cooperative attitude does not just extend to brother chapters of the Blood Angels either, and many times the successors have found themselves fighting along beside other Imperial armies, such as during the Third War for Armageddon, where the Flesh Terrors and Blood Angels bolstered the defenses against innumerable Orks, or when the Blood Drinkers rescued the Cadian 35th Regiment on Helios Alpha. The Second War for Armageddon, as the Ork Wog Gazgkul ravaged the Imperial High World of Armageddon, the Blood Angels, as well as their brothers from the Ultramarines and the Salamanders chapters, arrived on Armageddon to lend the beleaguered planet's defenders aid during the Second War for Armageddon. Such was Lord Commander Dante's reputation that Tushan and Marneus Caligar, the chapter masters of the other two chapters, ceded overall command of the entire Space Marine strike force on Armageddon to him. The Blood Angels bore the brunt of the close-quarter fighting, which eventually culminated in a massed drop-pod assault into the heart of the warlord Gazkul Mag Aruk Thrakas Ork forces that finally broke the back of the massive Greenskin army. Blood Angel Civil War and the Fabius Bile incident? Fabius Bile? The future Blood Angel, Rafen, was born on the world of Baal Secundus, the second of a tribal chieftain and the brother of Archeo. The two brothers were both aspirants in the Blood Angels chapter's blood trials to see if they would become Space Marine neophytes. After being challenged to a seemingly simple task by the Blood Angels Sergeant Chorus, Raven failed and despairingly proceeded to march into the desert, expecting to die for his loss in the blood trials. However, the Thunderhawk that bore Sergeant Chorus, Raven's brother Archeo, and the other successful aspirants for recruitment by the chapter was caught in a massive storm during its ascent and crashed near Raven's position. Rushing to their assistance, Raven helped Chorus defend against the dangerous native wildlife of Baal Secundus that was drawn to the crash site. Having saved the Space Marine and his new recruits, Sergeant Chorus noted that due to losses among the aspirants from the crash, there was a spot amongst the Blood Angels candidates for Raven after all. After becoming a Space Marine, Raven quickly earned the rank of Sergeant and commanded his own squad among the Blood Angels. He played a prominent role in the most recent events to affect the Blood Angels, including the Primarch Sanguinius' supposed rebirth in the form of Raven's brother Archeo, as part of a plot on the part of the traitorous Inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus, Remius Steele, who had become a devotee to Tzeentch to destroy the Blood Angels from within. Archeo had actually been deliberately mutated by the power of the Lord of Change, as instigated by his servant Steel, or Stele, in an attempt to transform the Blood Angels into servants of chaos. Rafen was ultimately forced to kill his brother during the battle on the Shrine World of Sabian between the two factions, though his actions saved the Blood Angels from chaos corruption. Sergeant Rafen of the Blood Angels. Rafen also proved instrumental in defending against the assault on the Blood Angels Fortress Monastery on Baal, or Baal, by Fabius, or Fabius, Bile, the Chaos Space Marine apothecary, who was a renegade even from his own Emperor's Children Trader Legion, in his obsessive quest to genetically engineer the perfect warrior. With the Blood Angels having won the battle on Baal, or Baal, Rafen was then assigned a mission by Lord Commander Dante, the Blood Angels Chapter Master, to recover a file of the blood of the Blood Angels Primarch Sanguinius, which had been stolen by Bile during a conclave between the Blood Angels and their successor chapters, the Sanguinary Brotherhood. Rafen's second mission was to punish Bile with death for his transgressions against the chapter. Having followed Bile futilely for some time on board the Blood Angel strike cruiser T-Show, Rafen received assistance from his blood cousin Nox of the Flesh Terrors chapter. Together, the two Space Marine sergeants combined their squads to hunt down Bile, launching a strike against a powerful renegade Magos of the Adeptus Mechanicus named Methune Zalik. Zalik had been making deals with Bile, who had usurped the identity of another Mechanicus tech priest named Heron Serpens, the same alias used by Bile to infiltrate the Blood Angels chapter on Baal. The battle against Zalik took place on board the Archeohort, an ancient and unusual Adeptus Mechanicus excavation starship manned by servitors, and members of the Mechanicus elite cybernetic warriors, the Skitari. By taking advantage of a turncoat within Zelik's ranks, Rafen, Nox, and their men found their way to Zelik's trophy room, where they destroyed the relics recovered by the Magos, and forced his surrender, lest his work be undone. During the battle, Rafen had lost his bolter to a trap laid by Zalik. However, among the relics and goods in Zalik's collection was a plasma pistol, bearing the name and chapter markings of Arian, a long-dead hero of the Blood Angels, which Rafen took as his new sidearm. With the Archeohort, the Taicho, and the Gabriel on loan from the Flesh Terrors, Rafen and his men traveled to the planet Denicus 5, where Zalik had last dealings with Bile. The planet itself was unusual in that it had suffered an attack by the Tyranids, but the events had left the oceans intact, as well as several aquatically mutated Tyranid specimens leaderless and feral on the planet. Sacrificing the Archeohort, Rafen, Nox, and their men descended to Deinicus 5, using a submersible to approach the suspected base of operations of the progenitor Fabius Bile. During the approach, Rafen and his men battled large Tyranid creatures similar in size and shape to the legendary Kraken. During the underwater battle, Rafen was separated from his allies and floated to the surface, where mutated slaves of Bile captured him and took him to Bile's laboratory and fortress. Rafen, disarmed and implanted with a strange genetically engineered maggot that prevented him from moving, was taken before Bile himself. Bile, lost in grandeur, explained to Rafen his plan to clone none other than the Emperor of Mankind himself. Though wounded and weakened, Rafen managed to assault the progenitor and killed him by tearing out his neck. Not his throat, his neck. However, Bile was not dead. Immediately after the death, Rafen was forced into a strange arena where he raced against mutants and captured Space Marines of the other chapters. Not dead, after the death. Okay. Lest he be killed. There, amongst the audience, Rafen saw Bile alive. During the race, Rafen convinced the morose Taricus of the Doom Eagles chapter to side with him in an uprising against Bile. During this time, Nox and the remaining men under his and Rafen's command made landfall against the fortress. It was then that Ceres, a librarian in Rafen's squad, psychically contacted Rafen and bade him to attack a strange warp signature to prevent Bile from escaping. The warp signature turned out to be a captured and harvested Tyranid Zoanthrope, whom Bile had bent to his will to create warp portals and keep the Tyranids still on the planet away from his fortress. Curiously, the Zoanthrope welcomed its death by Rafen's hand. During the ensuing battle, Bile was killed no less than 4 times, and the truth was revealed when Rafen and a handful of his allies encountered 2 copies of Bile at once. They were merely clones of the true Fabius Bile, who was not even on the planet. Still, the last clone did possess the coveted vial of the Primarch Sanguinius' blood he had stolen from the Blood Angels Fortress Monastery, which Raven managed to take from Bile and inject into himself to defeat him. By exploiting Bile's last-ditch escape attempt, Raven and his men and Bile's Space Marines slaves managed to teleport away from Dicinius V while the feral Tyranids ravaged the fortress. The Third War for Armageddon. Despite the bulk of the chapter being deployed at the time of the Third War for Armageddon, 998 of the 41st, against the threat of the Tyranid Hive Fleet Leviathan in the galaxy's eastern fringes, Commander Dante still deployed the Blood Angels' Third Company, led by Captain Erasmus Tycho, that's how you spell RC, to Armageddon when the Hive world fell under war boss Gazkul's baleful attack. That Ork led the greatest Wog in the history of the Imperium to assault the strategically located Hive world once more. During the ensuing conflict, Captain Tycho succumbed to the Black Rage, finally meeting a valiant end as a part of the Blood Angels' Death Company upon the walls of Hive Tempestora. Brother Captain Macchiavi succeeded him in command of the Third Company. The darkest hour. At 998 of the 41st, a tendril of the Tyranid Hive Fleet Leviathan was on a direct course to attack the Blood Angels' homeworld, Baal, or Baal. News reached Baal that the Krypton Shield, the shield worlds of the Krypton system, intended to hold back the might of the Great Devourer, had collapsed. Exacerbating this already terrible threat was a massive Daemon army led by the dread bloodthirster Greater Demon of Khorne's Kabanda, which had already struck at Amoni, the outermost planet of the Baal system. Facing a possible war on two fronts, Lord Commander Dante sent out a call for all of the Space Marine chapters in the Imperium who were successor chapters of the Blood Angels, the so-called Sanguinary Brotherhood, to send forces to aid their ancestral legion. The Flesh Terrorists were the first to do so, deploying their entire chapter for the war to defend Baal. Ultimately, all the Blood Angel successor chapters, save for the Lamenters, answered Lord Commander Dante's call, including the Knights of Blood, who had been declared excommunicate traitors by the High Lords of Terra centuries before, but believed themselves to still be loyal to the Emperor and their progenitors. Together with these allies, the Blood Angels prepared to meet the greatest threat they had known since the Horus Heresy. As the time of ending loomed large over the galaxy, and the shield worlds of Kryptis teetered on the edge of collapse, the Sons of Sanguinius had greater cause than ever to stand together. For the Sons of Baal are never stronger than when destiny demands great deeds of them, and whether they stand and fight in the gates of the Imperial Palace on Terra or the vitrified sands of some alien world, they will not be found wanting. Thus the Blood Angels hurled themselves into the Imperium's greatest and most terrible wars, fighting with a dynamism and determination that leaves even their brother Space Marines in awe. Of late, they have found themselves stretched thinner than ever, fighting simultaneously in the Third War for Armageddon and actions around the Eye of Terror and against the onrushing horror of Hive Fleet Leviathan. So is all this stuff happening right now in the lore then? Because it's not being written as if it's stuff that happened already. It's written as if it's happening now. It was on the shield world of Kryptis that Commander Dante and many of his finest battle brothers faced the horrors of the Cryptoid Tendril. This splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Leviathan was headed straight for the Blood Angels' homeworld of Baal, and its advance had to be stopped. The Blood Angels prevailed against their Xenos foes, yet the Baal was still at risk. Dante's forces made all speed through the warp to return and bolster the defenses of the Blood Angels' chapter planet, but they were still many solar weeks distant when word reached them of from High Champlain Astorath the Grim. A new threat had emerged in the Deamor system, an invasion by the armies of Chaos that could undermine the defenses of the Cadian Gate in preparation for Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, if it were allowed to succeed. Already the High Champlain was en route at the head of the Blood Angels' 5th Company, but greater strength would be required to defeat the traitorous foe. With a heavy heart, Commander Dante diverted much of his own force, knowing that every warrior sent away was another who could not defend Baal. Yet they were the Blood Angels, they could do no less. Dante pressed on towards Baal with little more than an honor guard at his side, while the rest of his warriors turned their Voidcraft and made for the Deamor system. Which brings us to the Deamor campaign. The tides of the war proved fickle. The warships of the Blood Angels' 1st and 2nd Companies made up considerable time on Astorath and his 5th Company warriors, and translated into the Deamor system within only solar minutes of their brothers. It was almost as though some other agency wished to see them burst simultaneously into real space. The momentary delay proved crucial, for it was all that stood between Captain Carlane's forces and sudden damnation. As the first captain established contact with the Fifth Company's vessels, Death Company chaplain Daenor informed him of their plight. As the Blood Angels' vessels translated in system, they were suddenly enveloped by a severe psychic attack. It was warp sorcery of some kind that engulfed the Blood Angels' void ships like a storm, but worse were its effects upon the minds of all on board. The storm inflicted visions of the sort every Blood Angel had hoped never to see. The malefic sorcery struck at the chapter's genetic curse. It unleashed the Black Rage. Though exact numbers remain uncertain, it appeared almost the entirety of the Fifth Company had been affected. There was a moment's pause as Carlene digested this terrible news. The Black Rage. All Blood Angels dreaded its touch, but to have it forced upon them by some artifice of the foe? It was a violation of the highest order. Azarath and Death Company chaplain Daenor, the other chaplains on board, and their librarians, all those with psyker training or psychic defenses, had survived. The rest had fallen to the curse. The helots who made up the warship's crews had cloistered themselves in terror, with some having been slain by the affected battle brothers. It was sheer bedlam aboard the vessels of the Fifth Company. First Captain Carlian immediately dispatched the chaplains of both the First and Second Companies, as well as the Sanguinary Guard, to aid the beleaguered survivors and bring their fallen under control in an attempt to restore the ships to order. Vengeance and death. The picture here says Death Company's chaplain Daenor leads the Blood Angels Death Company against the Crimson Slaughter on Amethol. Guess we'll get to that. After they brought their fallen brethren under control and determined the wider strategic situation in the system, the Blood Angels wasted no time in launching their attack. They could not do so quickly enough, for already it seemed as though the enemy's plans were well advanced. Crimson Slaughter warbands were present at all the primary Mechanicus hubs. Not sure what that is. Enemy forces were heavily investing the north and south hemispheres of the world of Amethol as expected, concentrated around multiple dig sites. At Hub Beta Secundus, the Death Company dropped in 2 waves. Chaplain Daenor and his brothers came down well within the Mechanicus complex, landing between the advanced elements of the Crimson Slaughter and their prize. The Crimson Slaughter had struck at the 5 major concentrations of Mechanicus forces on the planet. The 5 zones were given separate war zone designations by the Crimson Slaughter: Carnage, Cruelty, Hatred, Malice, and Perdition. Chaos Lord Crandon the Relentless himself led the Chaos Advance in Warzone Carnage. Meanwhile, Astarath and Lamartes led the main force of the Death Company against the outer edge of the dig site's defenses, seeking to encircle them in a constricting ring of carnage. The Crimson Slaughter soon found themselves trapped against the defense lines they had so recently overrun. The devastation wrought by the Death Company was breathtaking. The Crimson Slaughter were pushed back on every front, forced to huddle amongst the wrecked defenses on Beta Secundus' outskirts. Many of the traders were becoming slow and clumsy, burdened by uncontrollable mutation or shuddering with warp energies that were causing them to literally burst into flames. The Crimson Slaughter attack had soon lost all momentum. It was fragmenting by the second, caught from both sides by Death Company and Mechanicus forces. Daenor proudly noted that his Death Company warriors had fought with magnificent strength and courage, despite their terrible affliction. Though the enemy had thrown everything at them, from brass sinew daemon engines to disgusting warp craft, still Daenor's warriors had prevailed. The Blood Angels continued to press their attack, intent on killing every last traitor present on Amethol. The defense of Amethol. Leading elements consisting of the 1st, 2nd, and afflicted 5th Companies, Astarath the Grim and Lamartes put the traitor forces to flight. The arrival of the Blood Angels had changed the tides of war upon Amethol, and made possible a concerted counteroffensive on every front. Moreover, the attack by the Death Company upon Hub Beta Secundus had seen Crandon the Relentless and his elite guard hurled back in disarray. For a time, it looked as though the war was turning resoundingly in the Imperium's favor. When the Chaos response came, however, it proved unexpectedly devastating. The true architect behind the traitors' attack, the Chaos Sorcerer Zorphos of the Black Legion, had planned for this inevitable outcome. As he continued enacting a dark ritual, a large World Eater's murder fleet arrived in system, led by the infamous Berserker Karn the Betrayer. This conglomeration of World Eater's war bands was a coordinate force of prodigious size, known as the Butcher Horde, led by the indomitable might of the Betrayer himself. Karn's forces, led by the Berserker Lords Korbadosh and Vraka, launched an immediate Dreadclaw drop pod assault on Amethol. Soon, Karn himself appeared at the vanguard of the murderous horde, slaying Imperial forces with unimaginable brutality. It says here, Karn the Betrayer is confronted by Daenor. But the Butcher Horde soon faced fierce resistance as the might of the Death Company met the World Eaters head-on. The favorite of Khorne dueled Death Company chaplain Daenor, but was led into an ambush by an Imperial Reaver-class Titan of the Legio Metallica. This attack marked the beginning of the counteroffensive by that Loyalist Titan Legion's involvement, which decimated the traitor forces, but this merely forestalled the traitors' advance, as their sheer numbers soon began to overwhelm the Blood Angels' forces. Yet, the expert leadership of Astaroth and Chaplain Daenor restored some order to the afflicted brothers' ranks. Spearheaded by the furious Lamartes, the Death Companies then countercharged their enemies, dictating the shape of the battle rather than waiting to be overwhelmed. It was a daring move, and one that slowed the Khornate advance. Yet, soon enough, the massively outnumbered Blood Angels sustained appalling casualties. Over 90% of the Death Company were slain by the time multiple engines of the Legio Metallica were able to reach the engagement area. The thunderous advance of the Titans drove the Khornate forces back and fractured their cohesion, providing time for Astaroth and Lamartes to extract the last remnants of their forces. Daenor was born from the battlefield by Astaroth himself, hacked and mangled by Karn the Betrayer. The loss of the Death Company brothers was acceptable, for it had always been their destiny to perish in selfless battle, and they had sold themselves as dearly as they could. Astaroth would not allow Daenor to perish, however, for the Death Company chaplain was amongst the most accomplished of his order. Are they going to turn him into one of the things? Hex Infernium. In the wake of the Titans' attack, the surviving Khornate warband scattered away from the hub Beta Secundus, marauding at will in search of blood and skulls. Blood for the Blood God and all that. Skulls for the Skull Throne. The surviving Legio Metallica war engines also disengaged, the Titan strength needed elsewhere to defend against the fresh waves of Daemon engines being flown in from Lowline. Nor was this danger restricted to hub Beta Secundus. As the war raged across the surface of Amethol, Imperial counterattacks were being driven back or ground down by huge packs of newly forged Daemon engines. The traitors were receiving a steady stream of powerful reinforcements. The Imperial forces were not. By inescapable arithmetic of war, it could only be a matter of time before the forces of Chaos were victorious. Just as the Blood Angels' attack on the Daemon engine factories of Lowline, or is that Ioline, seemed doomed to costly failure, there came the manifestation of a mysterious power that has long aided Sanguinius' sons in their darkest hours. Blazing with golden light, the Sanguinor dropped from the storm-lashed heavens and rallied the Blood Angels. The what? With the help of their avenging angel, the Blood Angels successfully destroyed the Hex Infernium, denying the traitors any further reinforcements of Daemon engines. As the Crimson Slaughter continued to bleed against the might of the valiant Blood Angels, the Chaos Sorcerer Zorphos rejoiced as his machinations finally came to fruition. The Chaos Lord planned to use the slaughter and carnage on Amethol to help power the Chaos artifact known as the Banshee Stone, to create a vast warp rift that would drown the Daemor system in a veritable tide wave of demons. The resulting destruction wreaked by the Neverborn would extend Abaddon the Despoiler's crimson path from Cadia to Daemor, and hopefully, one day, Terra itself. The Screaming Pit? In the wake of the Archangel's destruction of Ioline, the war for the Daemor system entered its finale. Within solar hours of the Hex Infernium's destruction, word reached the Imperial leadership of combat escalating across the star system. Meanwhile, Chaos Ground Force has moved to strike the killing blow. The time had come for victory or death. Stirred by action by the destruction of Ioline, the Black Legion struck at Amethol directly. They concentrated their full force upon Hub Beta Secundus and the dark prize that lurked there. The Imperial forces had gathered to form a great noose, marshalling their strength before they struck the last blow to eradicate the Chaos threat once and for all. The plan belonged to Captain Aphael, whose own forces formed the southernmost element of the offensive. As one, the armies of the Imperium advanced across the burned-out kill zone that the Mechanicus had cleared so many solar weeks before. They charged into the blizzard of fire hurled from on high by the warships of the Black Legion. Barrage bombs sailed down to explode with enormous force, sending knights sprawling and turning squads of Skitarii to ash. Lance beams hammered the Titan void shields or atomized squads of assault marines. Yet, though the bombardment was heavy and the destruction horrific, The Imperial forces did not slacken their pace. While battle raged on the planet below, vast warships dueled in the void high above. Imperial map showing the disposition of both Imperial forces and the forces of Chaos on Hub Beta Secundus. The adepts of the Adeptus Mechanicus understood the true prize that the Black Legion sought upon Amethol, even if few others did. It was the thing that had brought techno-archaeologist Dominus Ivasnaphon and his followers from the Forge world of Metallica to this cursed planet. It was a power of unbelievable magnitude, though the Imperium and the traitors sought it for very different reasons. The Chaos Sorcerer Zorphos knew its true nature, for it was he and his cabal who had located it for Abaddon. The Despoiler had set his forces in motion as soon as it had been identified. The battle would come to bear upon the success of the 13th Black Crusade, for it offered an opportunity to extend Abaddon's crimson path like a bloody wound across Imperial space. The secret that the Black Legion sought, and that the Adeptus Mechanicus were raising against them to seize, lay deep beneath the surface of Amethol. It was ancient, unspeakably and unimaginably so. Known as the Banshee Stone, it was a device the size of a world, forged by godlike beings before Terra had even spawned its first single-celled organisms. It was a cage for the infernal creatures of the warp, a weapon to dwarf the damnation cache that had slipped through Abaddon's fingers in the world of Pandorax. And, according to the divinations of Zorphos and his followers, it was full to the brim with howling demons. It required only the correct ritual to be broken open, at which point the sudden release of so many warp entities would tear a gaping wound in reality itself. While battle raged between the Blood Angels and the Black Legion, the Chaos Sorcerer Lord Zorphos arrived at the lip of Warzone Carnage's main excavation site at Hub Beta Secundus. Their objective was the gate of the primordial Demon Cage. Thanks to the Crimson Slaughter, Zorphos knew where the cage's wards were weakest and where its inmates' powers could leak through. Though the Blood Angels fought the forces of Chaos to a standstill, and looked as though they would achieve inevitable victory, the heroes of the Blood Angels felt a terrible sense that they had been maneuvered into attacking too late. With their foes gone, the Red Armored Warriors rushed down the earth ramp and into the flickering depths of the excavation site. There they faced the screaming horror of the Chaos artifact, the Banshee Stone, a twisted crystal the size of a boarding torpedo around which blood was welling through the cracking bedrock and lapping tides. Though the ritual was not yet complete, Zorphos realized that he was out of time. This would not be another Pandorax, however. The Banshee Stone had reached a terrible pitch of disharmony, and massive damage had been wrought upon the wards that held the demon cage closed. It would not rupture immediately, but it would not last long. With a booming psychic command, the sorcerer ordered the retreat. Abandoning the Banshee Stone to run on for as long as it could, Zorphos and his cabal stormed up the ramp that led out of the pit. Accompanied by black armored Terminators, the sorcerer and his acolytes unleashed the full fury of their psychic might to drive back the Blood Angels who rushed to meet them. With breathing space secured and a clear teleport lock established, the Black Legion warriors were whisked away in a blaze of warp light, leaving its foes raging in its wake. On the planet's surface, the slaughter continued for many solar hours before the last of the traitor forces were destroyed. Only by the combined efforts of Librarian Asmazael and his psychically attuned brothers was the Banshee Stone's hideous lament silenced. By that time, the traitor fleet had scattered, making for predetermined retreat coordinates. The Blood Angels then extracted their forces from Amethol's surface. In the solar hours that followed, a roiling blast wave swept across the planet's surface, obliterating all trace of chaos industry on the planet and leaving nothing but blackened, glowing ash in its wake. It took 7 solar days before the fury of the global firestorms burnt down to fume and smoke, by which time the planet was little more than a ravaged shell. The destruction was unimaginable, but the Blood Angels had their victory and had dealt Zorphos' forces a dire blow. Of the Sanguinor there was no sign. Carlian himself had seen him escape the destruction of Ioline, a streak of gold soaring away into the heavens. When the hour was once again dark enough, he would return to aid his brothers. Gonna have to find out what that is. The Imperium believed that they had won a great victory on Amethol, that they had foiled the Despoiler's plans once again, but Librarian Asmazael realized that the enemy had done more damage to the Banshee Stone than the Blood Angels had first realized. Perhaps defeat on Amethol had not been avoided, but merely delayed. Unknown to the Imperial forces, already the cracks in the crystal that served as a demonic cage had spread beyond repair, even had anyone living known how to fix them. The energies of the Banshee Stone were no longer needed. It was just a matter of time before Zorphos and his followers completed their diabolical task. the bars of the Daemon Cage would break, and it was already beginning. As they gathered their forces to depart the system and return to Baal, the Blood Angels left behind Librarian Asmosael and a squad of 10th Company scouts. They would remain on Amethol, attempting to gauge the true extent of the damage done and standing watch in case the prison of the Banshee Stone should ever threaten to break asunder. The devastation of Baal and the Indomitus Crusade. After sacrificing the shield worlds of the Cryptis system to fend off the Xenos' earliest advance on the Baal system, the planet of Baal itself came under intense attack by the Hive Fleet Leviathan. The Tyranid Hive Fleet was of such mass, even after its considerable losses, that it blotted the stars from the skies. Lord Commander Dante bolstered the formidable defenses of the Blood Angels' homeworld and its moons like never before. Not one to await attack, he also sent forth scores of preemptive strikes to forces to delay, mislead, and whittle down the living armada. Hundreds of splinter fleets were thus defeated. Dante's call, beseeching the Blood Angel successors to send immediate aid to their parent chapter, did not go unheard. The Flesh Terrors were the first to arrive, and ultimately all the successor chapters save the Lamenters answered the call. Even the Knights of Blood, who had been declared excommunicated traitors by the High Lords of Terra, arrived to bolster the defenses. It was still not enough. You already said all that, but I guess you had to say it again. Learning at an exponential rate, Hive Fleet Leviathan could not be thwarted by the same strategy twice. Advancing steadily, their superior numbers cleared the entire surrounding sector of life before the Xenos made planetfall upon Baal and her twin moons. The first 19 waves, each larger than the last, were driven off at great loss to the Blood Angels and their successor allies among the Sanguinary Brotherhood. 5 chapter masters fell in that bitter fighting, 3 in the battle at the Dome of Angels alone. The Tyranids began the process of absorbing all biomass from Baal and its moons, absorbing even the radiation-poisoned desert of Baal Secundus. With their defenses in ruin and Baal's moon stripped and broken, the remaining Space Marines retreated back to the rubble of the Blood Angel sprawling fortress monastery. There, they prepared for a last stand as the next wave swept downwards. Doom, it seemed, had at last come for the sons of Sanguinius. It was then that the Great Rift cracked open the galaxy in the wake of the fall of Cadia to the 13th Black Crusade, and the withered Baal system was blasted by the etheric storms. Although no further attack waves came from the Leviathan Hive Fleet, not a single Imperial defender remained alive upon the last moon, Baal Prime. On Baal itself, there were already enough Tyranids to destroy the Imperial troops many times over. Even with no chance of victory, Commander Dante led his troops, each fighting retreat seemingly more hopeless than the last. As the final perimeter was broken, the stars reappeared. Looking skywards, the Tyranids on the surface of Baal sought contact with their Hive Fleet, but it was gone, replaced by a newly arrived Imperial fleet. Like an angel of vengeance came Rabute Guilliman and his Indomitus Crusade. I have no idea if I'm saying his first name right. I'll probably not say it anymore if it makes me. After many more battles, Baal was finally cleared of the Xenos threat. A great rebuilding of both world and chapter was undertaken, for the Blood Angels and their successors were sorely needed elsewhere in the beleaguered Imperium. What became of the Leviathan is a mystery, although a clue was found upon the now barren moon of Baal Prime. Xenos skulls were piled impossibly high in the much reviled 8-pillared symbol of one of the Blood Angels' most terrible and ancient nemesis, the bloodthirster Kabanda and his army of Cornate demons. So, they were saved by Kabanda? I wonder what... Or were they saved by Kabanda because he's like, no one gets to destroy the Blood Angels but me! And they just messed up all the Tyranids. Primaris Space Marines. Guilliman and the Archmagos Belisarius Call came to Baal with a kingly gift. A recently inducted Primaris Space Marine battling the foes of the Imperium, Blood Angels Primaris. Disgorged from the hibernation chambers aboard Call's freighter hulk, the Zar Kazator, hundreds of Primaris Space Marines joined in the final destruction of the Tyranid swarms. These superlative warriors wore the colors of the Blood Angels, the Blood Drinkers, the Flesh Terrors, and many more. They were inheritors of the might of the Primarchs, and they bolstered the depleted ranks of their adoptive chapters just when they were needed most. The Scions of Sanguinius accepted their reinforcements gladly, along with Call's offering of the technologies that would allow them to recruit and create still more Primaris Battle Brothers. Commander Dante never expected to see his chapter's final days, and yet he faced them unbowed. He never expected to see a Primarch return, yet he knelt before Guilliman with thankful hearts. When Guilliman named Dante as his regent of the Imperium Nihilus, the Lord of Baal felt the hand of fate land heavy upon his shoulder. With the fury of the Great Rift unleashed, a darkness looms more terrible than any in the Imperium's history. The Blood Angels now stand before that darkness with the throne of terror at their backs, and will have to fight like never before. Coupled with the revitalizing purpose of this new duty is the fresh hope brought by the Primera Space Marines, the possibility that perhaps the Sons of Sanguinius will not burn out like a guttering candle. It is said amongst the Blood Angels that Commander Dante has never stood taller, even as he does so in the face of such terrible adversity. The region of the Imperium Nihilus has sworn to purge his dark new realm of the Taint of Chaos, even should it take another 1,000 Terran years and more. After all, it is amidst the darkest night that such golden angels shine the brightest. How much longer do we gotta go? Notable campaigns. Probably quickest to just scroll back to the top and check. Notable campaigns. There is so much more after that. Oh my god. But it looks like it's mostly just like all the weapons and stuff. So I guess, for the sake of simplicity, that the Blood Angels are going to have another episode. But like I did when I was reading The Sisters of Silence, I'll probably lace that with reading about some other people. Since I'm going to be trying to do a full playthrough of Warhammer Space Marine, I should probably read about the Ultramarines and the Orks. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. If you like it, a like and a subscribe would be appreciated. If you want to click the bell, that'll notify you of future uploads. And I will see y'all in the next one. Later.